working. Here we go. Helps if I've got volume. Hello and welcome once again to the Vishal and Company. I'm just seeing that we're having some errors here on the presentation. We don't have Joseph or Maddie here today. They are doing their thing, as it were. So Maddie's got an audition, and Joseph, I think, is off partying.
He's probably watching his Shiba Inu position.
There you go. That's the ticket. He's sitting in front of the computer screen calculating all the money he's making. Actually, I have a friend who, long before Elon Musk stuck his fat nose in the mix, actually thought Shiba Inu was an interesting concept. And I'll talk about that later, but he's making money hand over fucking fist right now.
Yeah, Galen, I remember you talked about it in a previous show. I thought you were a holder as well, or a
I was thinking about getting into it because I like the concept. Right, but yeah. I don't want to interrupt your market entry here. Let's talk about the big picture and then squeeze in on these other things.
The crypto, sure.
Yeah.
So markets were ranging pretty much all of last week. We finally got the breakout this week. I was actually expecting we would have gotten a larger pop today, and I'll tell you why in just a minute. But as you can see, yesterday we did end up selling off, and today just a mixed doji candle here. If I go on the 4 hour, you can sort of see that, in 24 hours of price action, we literally did nothing really. There was a bit of a pop overnight. I like this as an entry. If you read some of my market moment articles, I mentioned how this is a triple bottom pattern that we could play and ride, and technically it's still a valid trade heading into next week if we can close back above this 42.27 zone. A lot of factors that were weighing down on the stock markets in terms of fear. COVID cases was one thing. There was like the energy crisis in China and also in Europe, which I guess sort of got relieved, but we'll talk about oil in just a minute. But I know Russian pipelines are now flowing into Europe. And then there was talks about obviously Evergrande, which actually is still an issue. Financial Times wrote an article about how their default is actually still, they missed more bond payments.
Yep. And
they're approaching their default date. So there's still some fear on Evergrande, on that space there. And then basically, I was personally thinking it was more of a taper tantrum, right? The market is more worried about what the Fed is going to do. If you're one of these people that believe that the markets are up due to cheap money and Fed basically monetary policy, if they begin to taper, that would maybe be negative for the stock market, and that could cause a drop in the stock market, what people are calling a taper tantrum. Just technically, again, folks, this zone here, I won't get too technical, but that's the lower high we're working with at 44.75. And really, you want to climb back above that, right? Once we climb back above that zone, then we can say, okay, any more down pressure is nullified on the technical case. So we still have some room to go, and markets could actually still roll over and break below these recent lows here. So that's the level I'm watching. But let's get to the jobs data, because if you were, again, part of our Discord channel or reading market moment articles up on EQUITY.GURU, EQUITY.GURU, we were talking about the jobs data, or the NFP, non-farm payrolls, which are the jobs that the U.S. created for the previous month, so for the month of September. And we said that it was going to be important. Well, actually, we didn't say it. The Fed told us that it would be important. Jerome Powell, in his last Fed meeting, said, hey, look, inflation is still transitory. We're not really worried about it. We're more worried about the employment data. And again, this is what Powell said, but he said, we'll look at the next employment data. It doesn't have to be a bombshell report. It doesn't have to be too great, but we just want to see jobs coming in and jobs being created. And from there, we'll decide on tapering. So traders on the market was saying, okay, that's that missing piece now, that missing element. How much or how good do these jobs number have to be? And if they're really, really good, that means maybe the Fed tells us about tapering this month or maybe next month, right? So basically, the schedule for tapering it comes sooner rather than later. And this is what we got instead today. We got September jobs adding 194,000 jobs, which actually missed expectations, because the expectations was for 500, so 500,000 jobs to be created for the month of September, and instead we got 194,000 jobs, so we missed expectations. However, the unemployment rate, that actually dropped. So we went from 5.1% unemployment down to 4.8%. So again, right, here we go, missed the 500,000 expectation, and the unemployment rate fell from 5.2 to 4.8%. So
how does that
I
work?
guess you can say it's a bit confusing, but
what?
right.
I don't
So
get that one.
that's what happened, and I think maybe that's what we're seeing here in the markets. It's one of those numbers that doesn't necessarily tell you that the Fed's going to delay their taper, because the unemployment rate actually dropped, which is a good thing. But the data, 194 jobs last month, fell short of the 500,000 expected. That's a pretty big miss. So I think that's the case of what the markets are doing here. They're sort of scratching their head and saying, okay, so is the Fed going to taper, or are they going to say this is bad data and kick the can down the road, even though the unemployment rate dropped? So, I mean, before we go any further, anything from you guys, TK or Galen, you guys want to comment on this weird, I guess, dichotomy going on?
Yeah, we're handling a nuclear potato right now. That's basically what's going on. I don't understand the whole sort of discrepancy between the unemployment rate and the lack of job numbers. That doesn't make any sense to me. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't bode well for the economy. We're heading into the Christmas month, which should be to a certain extent. I mean, maybe that's where the unemployment rate is. Well, no, we're not that close yet. Well, who knows? Maybe Halloween stores are hiring by the millions. I don't know. That could be it.
Spirit Halloween, that costume store.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, those are the guys that are making a dent in the unemployment numbers. I honestly, that's probably what's happening. Is all of this change in unemployment numbers is more a temporary situation, seasonal jobs, or as you said, Spirit Halloween hitting the market, pulling all sorts of people off the sidewalk to come work in the store. I don't see this as long term, especially since there's no new jobs really created. This does not bode well for the economy.
Strange.
Also, I've seen the reports from a lot of companies have kind of changed what they're talking about. So just last year around this time, management was talking more about the effects of the pandemic. That was the biggest thing they were talking about in their reports. Now, a lot of the discussion, for example, for Amazon, they're talking about Apple. They're talking about inflation, or the cost of the services has increased for them. They don't see it as a short-term problem. They think it's going to persist. And they obviously they put their corporate lingo and say, oh, we're going to adjust and blah blah blah. But that's Apple. It has Apple has a higher chance of adjusting. But if you look at, we did a show on them this week, and they're going to be published next week on ginger beer. It's
ginger beef.
Ginger beef. Sorry, ginger beef.
But ginger beer too. I don't mind that. Let's do both.
And what's funny is, if this company is real, they were talking about increasing costs, but for them it was meat and poultry and stuff like that. And so it's like the conversation from the Fed and what these guys are talking about is two different things.
Yeah.
These guys are saying there's a lot of pressure on business, and these guys are saying, oh, it's transitory. Don't worry, it's going to pass by and things are going to recover, and we're going to hire more people and create more jobs, and it's not happening. It's happening slower than they want it to happen, is what I'll say. So it kind of goes back to the crazy man Burry, where he's saying, don't listen to anything these guys are putting out. He deletes them.
Yes. Yeah, he deletes them. Yeah.
He's like, do not believe anything these guys put out. Just ignore it, discount it, and figure it out yourself. Look at the numbers that are coming out, and that tells you the story. So I lean on this camp, but he's more extreme. because obviously he has a tendency to want to be a contrarian.
Yeah, yeah. So just sticking with that whole theme here about rising costs for businesses. Let's quickly just mention oil hit $80 a barrel today. Took a bit of a drop now. It's at 79.50, and this is the West Texas. Actually, the Brent crude oil itself is at $83. But West Texas did hit $80 a barrel. And again, if I show you guys the weekly or maybe even the monthly chart, we're talking about prices not seen since 2014. My opinion, that's a technical break here. Even on the monthly chart, we have a lot of room to the upside. I'm not joking, but we can maybe see $90 a barrel by the end of the year. Like, that's how crazy things are, and obviously that would add pressure to inflationary. Oh, that would add inflationary pressures. If transportation costs are rising, then businesses will have to raise prices to move those costs to the consumers.
Absolutely, and food prices are already jumping. We're in for an inflationary run.
As I do with my free time, I was looking up some of the annual reports from the 1970s, that period with hyperinflation in the U.S. 13%, by the way, hasn't been seen.
And that was, I believe, when a Fed chair raised interest rates to over 12% or something.
12%, yeah. And excuse me, I was reading it and I was like, kind of looking at it like what you're talking about. I was like, okay, what was actually driving most of it, and why were people focusing on the wrong variables? So there's this guy, forgot his name now, but he was a fund manager back then. And he was talking about how people are focusing on the CPI or the consumer inflation. This is before the whole thing happened. And he's like, if you look at the wholesale prices, it's a better reflection, or advanced wholesale prices and advanced purchase orders. Okay. It's a greater indication of what's actually going on in the underlying economy with the companies. He's saying the CPI will change very slowly, because the reaction comes later. Kind of what Galen is alluding to is like the prices will go up, but I won't be affected right now. Companies will be affected, and then they adjust. And that's when we were affected later on, where I have to buy my iPhone 12 or whatever it is now at $50,000 or whatever it is. And that's when I wish Joseph was here today to talk about it in more detail, is where I get the argument for, cryptocurrencies. If people are saying, oh, the Fed doesn't really care about the value of their currency, why should I care about it? Hold gold or Bitcoin and etc. I disagree with the asset that they're choosing to hold, but I get the argument for, protect your wealth and all that. You can't go to an insurance company that is the one creating the fire, and from it.
It's very true. It's very true. We're in a dicey time right now. And as TK said, I don't necessarily, which could probably lead us into something else as well. As TK said, he disagrees with the asset that they're scrambling towards, turning Bitcoin into another free-for-all investment option. Again, cryptocurrency is a solution in search of a problem. It's not going to heal what's happening with the monetary system. The system itself is broken, and no matter what medium we use to transact, that brokenness will still exist. It'll only become more pronounced because even though the Fed may not care, quote unquote, about the value of the currency, there's still a reasonable solidity to the value of the currency. Whereas with cryptocurrency, there is nothing underlying it unless it's a stable coin. And there's very few of those. And they're not something you can actually use as currency still. They're all assets. So I'm stunned. I mean, fucking watch me start swearing now just because I'm about to mention the guy's name. Musk tweeting out on Twitter indicating that, Shiba Inu is the newest thing. Well, it's actually a little older than Musk's interest. It's been around for a while. And it does have an interesting concept because it flies in the face of typical cryptocurrency investment, which is not the buy and trade, but the buy and hold, because it deals in a paradigm that actually removes coins from the network unless you quote unquote bury them. You still get they still bear value, and they still are noted within the count of what is out there, but they're just not randomly eliminated from the system. Meaning that if you're going to buy it, it doesn't make sense to have it out in the open where you can trade it back and forth, because it could just disappear on you. And so it's a neat concept that I think actually just sort of lends itself towards building value rather than trading and suckering somebody else, the greater fool theory, right? So
yeah, you reminded me of a thing. He was talking to a school, another one of your favorite people in corporate America, Bezos. He was talking about how he was watching from 1997 until the actual initial bubble when it started popping up, and he was saying at the beginning, the people who started had the mission of using this new space. They actually were excited to put innovation that created value, and then people picked up on that and started making money, NFTs, and started doing NFTs, or like what now people are doing the same thing, where Bitcoin at the beginning had the fundamentals that it wanted to, or cryptos at the beginning, and it transitioned into this new thing where people could make money. And the bubbles happened, they came, they crashed, they repeated a few times, and now I feel like there are going to be companies that are going to be starting up now from people who've already been in the field and kind of tested out the different technologies and etc. We're trying to get something that's more established and actually creates value for people over time. The big question now is it going to be a currency or an asset? Yeah. And that's the question I don't think anyone has the answer to. So a lot of people we've talked to, and they say, oh yeah, it's going to be a currency. Just wait for it. The whole world is going to be on such and such coin.
That's or such a sucker play. Like, that is such a sucker play.
I don't know. Worse off, when Gary Vee starts talking about it, I even back off even more.
He's big on Ethereum, I believe, right? Or
yeah, Ethereum, man. He loves NFTs. He loves NFTs. Yeah, but he put out a warning this week, and he said, he's like, if you're going into NFTs, don't trade them. Go into them for the long term. He's like there's gonna be an NFT winter soon, and I'm like, damn, thank you.
Because they're just fucking icons. I mean, come on, it's not even art. It's just somebody putting something into electronic form, going, "Woo, buy this and sell it to your buddies." I mean, come on. I've seen some of the projects that are clearing, like bringing in the cash, and you can't tell me that 16-bit or 8-bit illustration there is of any complete value, any artistic value. It's just a ridiculous picture that somebody's convinced somebody else has value. Now, maybe that's what art is, but still, I don't see any reasonable value backing any of this transaction. It's a bubble market.
I think so. His argument is, and this is what made me laugh. I was like, oh my God, this is that situation where you're comparing something that has nothing to do with the actual. He said, if you have bought, for example, on Fortnite, you can buy skins for your avatars and stuff like that, and you trade actual cash US dollar for whatever their currency is called on the platform. He's like, it's the exact same thing, except this time it's a GIF or a 8-bit picture. And I was like, yeah, but it doesn't make it an investable asset. You can definitely say art is an investment, but it's also a gamble still. You have to kind of have to accept that with that price you're taking, a big portion of it is speculative. It's like don't neglect that element of it. But a lot of people are like, no, I'm a NFT investor, and I'm like, kudos to you, but don't ignore the speculative aspect of it. Like, don't ignore that part of it. And that's where I'm still with. As soon as Gary Vee likes it, I'm out.
Yeah, basically, it's a fucking casino. If you're not into the American dollar, or any dollar for that matter, any form of traditional fiat currency, your best bet at this point is to buy commodities.
Physical, yeah, hard
yeah,
assets.
hard assets. Go down to the silver exchange and buy yourself an ingot, 1 ounce ingot. Cheap is cheap. Silver is only going to go up. It's a integral part of our future, and it's something that can be easily spent or traded back and forth. Whereas, you know, when the world comes crashing down, who's going to buy your an NFT?
But Galen, it's different this time.
Yeah, exactly. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Thank you, 1929, coming back all over again.
I think, you know, another thing that some people don't like, maybe I guess we all say underestimate, but remember just like this week we had that Facebook outage.
Yes.
I mean, you know, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but what if we get something serious like that? You can't even access your cryptos.
Well, see, that's the thing, right? It's all heavily dependent on your internet connection, which in some ways also makes it an elitist form of asset and currency, because not everybody has that access or the ability to actually do transactions in that manner. So yeah, it's exclusionary. It's not the inclusive thing they're fucking trying to sell us. The same as with DeFi, you know, where if you're not stealing $90 million, who's going to be able to transact that way?
Yeah.
A bunch of yuppies in their fucking, you know, at Starbucks. You know, it's not going to be somebody in a third world country trying to make money that way. It's just not going to fucking happen.
But again, the experts will say we don't understand innovation.
Yeah,
we're not. We just don't get innovation. I reference Kathy Woods here, and just to take a sidebar here for a second,
yep.
if you really look at ARC and what it stands for, it's innovation. It's an investment fund at its core, but it's innovation. Some of the holdings, if you look through them, of the top 30, 20 of them don't make money. And that's part of pay for innovation, I assume. But what is Spotify innovating? That's one of her holdings. Has my taste in music changed? I agree with her. I do not understand innovation. I am not seeing it the way she's seeing it and how other people are seeing it. So I'm a step back and I'll buy RBC or some of those other boring
natural gas. You know the funny thing, TK and Galen, like last year. Remember when the stock markets were falling and everyone was like, "Oh man, like, you know, we need Warren Buffett to come out to say he's buying the dip," because generally, you know, if Warren Buffett's buying, people feel comfortable and, you know, they're going to be like, "Oh, okay, let's buy." And I don't know if you guys remember, but he did say he bought a company when every stock was falling. You know, Apple was dropping, Facebook was dropping, Microsoft, these big tech companies were all falling. Everything was falling. He could have picked up anything, any nice or big company or good company that he thinks is undervalued. And I don't know if you guys remember, but people made fun of him sort of when he bought it. But he went into natural gas. He bought a utility. He bought a natural gas company, and you know, a year later, we see natural gas hitting $6, right? Over $6. So I mean, hey man, this guy, he did it, dude. He did it.
He gauged that one. He may be, you know, over 80, but the guy still sees the market in terms of reality rather than fantasy.
Yep.
That's true. I want to throw a selfless plug for a company here. The ticker symbol is PEY. PE, sorry. PEY.
Payto. Canadian one.
Tell me about this.
So it's actually a natural gas producer in the deep basin of Alberta.
Okay, gotcha.
So it's kind of surrounded by bigger firms, and it's the smallest of scale, but the most profitable because of its size. And the biggest thing with the CEO when he puts out these monthly presentations where he just talks about what he thinks. Whenever you read it, you notice he never mentions the stock. He never mentions where he thinks the oil prices are going to go. He always just talks about what we have, what we own, and how we're producing it, and what we're costing you by trying to produce this. And nobody knows about the guy. I think his name is Dan Green or something. I forgot his name. Mm-hmm. But I saw the stock when it was around $2. and they had assets worth $8, and it's now at $9, I think. I think it's
$10
at
Canadian.
$9 Canadian,
10,
and
10.
their assets have gone from $8 to $10 in 2 years. So they actually created $2 per share of value for shareholders, just based off the prices before the jump in natural gas. And I'm like, it doesn't sound as exciting as buying, a fancy high tech company that distributes music, that's innovating music somehow, and it goes up 50% in 3 days. I kind of stick to the Buffettism here: is if you see your stock portfolio go up 50% in 3 days, be scared.
Yeah, not sustainable. There's insanity at play.
It's like, what are you gonna do once the hype train evaporates?
Yeah.
That's the big question I'm trying to bring up more with people is, okay, I completely get the innovative aspect of what you're talking about. I completely get the change in the world, and I think like an old man. I'm cool with that, but I want you to kind of separate what you're paying for and what you think you're getting. Because a lot of the time we're not paying for what we think we're getting, and that's why I kind of threw the prediction last year that we're gonna have a decade of basically no returns.
Well, see, that's the funny thing, right? Kathy Wood and her whole idea of as TK said, you just don't know innovation, and you're right. She doesn't know innovation either, because it's all been a bit of a scam. Spotify has not innovated music. I mean, it has in this one respect, as with many of its counterparts. That would be Amazon, Apple Music, whatever. The only thing that they have revolutionized is the ability to destroy the sector and change it so it doesn't actually pay back the people that it should be paying back. And they can only operate through monopoly control and bad business practice. There's no innovation in all reality. Spotify has fucked musicians. Apple Music has fucked musicians, and it was supposed to set them free. Services like Bandcamp have done something that is relatively nice to musicians, because it makes them part of the process and actually gives them I think it gives them like a near 100% cut of what they're selling, and it's not reducing the price of their products to pennies, right? And same thing with Amazon. It buggers suppliers through the mere greed of you and I being able to get a product a day later. Sears and Roebuck did a similar thing, but without screwing the supplier. His idea was, when he started the company, that there could be an equitable relationship between himself, suppliers, and customers, something that would make all three happy. And he did succeed in doing it. Unfortunately, the company made some serious mistakes in the 70s when it started to lose traction because the logistics of what it was doing became untenable. Just like the logistics with what Amazon is doing, which is merely a repeat of Roebuck, but on a computer screen, it's also untenable. To control the market at such a great rate and give these offerings to customers in terms of delivery and price without, quote unquote, sacrificing quality, which they do all the time, it doesn't do anything. It's on its last knees anyway, its last legs. We're going to see Spotify, we're going to see Bitcoin, we're going to see all of these things that have been hyped to the nines actually start to fall back when the reality trough hits. Because what are they doing besides taking our money?
I think if the party doesn't stop, people won't stop dancing. It's the ironic part of it. And last time I'll bring this guy up ever, but I feel Elon is in that situation.
He's a ringleader.
He really is the golden card for the innovative age right now. And he reminds me so much of I apologize for bringing them in the same name, but the WorldCom CEO.
No, that's okay. Put them together. Sit them in the same chair.
Yeah, it's like, oh yes, you know what? We are going to fill up the whole world with all these cables, and the internet is going to be so fast. And he wasn't wrong, but he wasn't pricing it the right way. He wasn't selling. He was
He wasn't honest.
Yeah, he wasn't honest. Yeah, it's like it's kind of funny that people are now starting to, hate on a lot of what he does, Elon. But I'm like, it's just the wave of things. There's only a few things that are very inevitable, and it's death, taxes, and cycles.
Yep. And I think currently, and that SpaceX hitting 100 billion makes me want to vomit. It basically is raping a government agency to do this, and then also committing to a project that blew away another company. I'm trying to remember. In the 90s, they tried the very same thing, a constellation system, Iridium. There we go. And it fell apart because it's unmanageable. He has to get half the world's population, or sorry, no, he has to get 300 million subscriptions for that to actually become profitable. And at $90 a month and 100,000 subscriptions, I think is what he's at right now, or 300 maybe. He's nowhere near that figure and probably will never achieve it, but he's suckered shareholders and the market into believing that this is actually achievable. It isn't. He's just going to waste your money, take it from companies that actually deserve the capital, and just squander it away on his pet projects. All the while thinking that he's absolute genius when he's very much closer to Peter Thiel's description of him as a fraud and a braggart. His moving of the Tesla headquarters to Texas is a prime example of the revelation of his true character, which is nothing. There's no character there. When questioned about taking this company to a state which questions the federal election still, and then also has made abortion virtually illegal, and also is handling COVID like a drunk. And then his reply is, I don't get involved in politics. That is a load of shit. The man has been so deeply in politics since his inception. He's been trading shots with federal agencies, the California state government, over public policy, not even stuff that just affects him. His stance on COVID and his getting pissed. This guy is more political than you can than you can name or number. And him going to Texas just shows more of the lack of moral backbone that this guy actually does have, and his commitment to only himself and generating profit for himself, not even for his investors. His kiss-ass attitude towards China, and not mentioning any of the problems that they have, going, it's a great country, they've built such wonderful infrastructure. Yeah, on the back of people that they're killing. But okay, that's fine. And Texas, it's a wonderful place. They built such a good atmosphere for business. Oh, really? So you're just kissing their ass and not saying anything against them because you just want to be, well, you want all the business, because basically Texas is bending over and taking it for big business. You know what? I can sort of understand that, but the idea that he's supposed to be some sort of moral high ground guy and then moving his industries to that, having huge court cases that, are in the tunes of hundreds of millions of dollars in regards to racist treatment of his employees at the Fremont factory. None of this is true. This guy's a complete fraud. He's just as bad as Zuckerberg. He'll cozy up to Idi Amin if it means that he'll make money.
That's one thing I don't think people have talked about a lot lately and I think that's kind of what Michael Burry is kind of alluding to. But I don't know how far true it is with all the CEOs. But a big part of a CEO's job is political arbitrage. Mm. You need to kind of know, especially in the US, and now a lot of companies are going global. They kind of need to kind of look at the scope and say, okay, this is what people are saying about, for example, Elon with the lithium mines. I think it was lithium. Mm-hmm. Yeah. People were, saying stuff about that instead of coming out and saying, oh yeah, that happened and suffered a little bit and blah, blah, blah. You just kind of play it another way and talk about the advantages that you're experiencing EDC. Bezos has done it where people are trying to get the union and stuff like that. And instead of coming out and saying, oh yeah, some of the employees are treated to get you that 1 day shipping, we put a lot of pressure on our employees, our suppliers, and we take advantage of our size and stuff like that. Apple does it as well. And people call it, right now they call it good business, But what it really is political arbitrage. Just knowing how to pull strings, because in the U.S. states want you to be there.
Yep.
Texas wants you to come and build your plants there. Detroit loves having you if you're a car manufacturer. They want you to come there. Seattle loves having all the tech companies that don't want to be in California. It's part of the business code in the US. I feel like it's not discussed as much, but it's a big part of it.
I mean, there's tons of companies leaving California, right? Like Oracle, HP, even Toyota from Japan moved their headquarters from California. I know a lot of rich people that are also leaving California because of taxations.
My heart's pumping piss water for these people. They already have enough fucking cash. They're just avoiding paying their fair share into the community. That's all. And that's
it. Could be that. I mean, if again we use the example, like Washington State has no income tax, and it has the one of the lowest corporate taxes in the U.S., which is why Amazon, Microsoft, Boeing, Starbucks, Costco.
You got to look at the size of California, the population it actually services, and the infrastructure it has to keep going. Comparatively speaking, Washington's got shit to worry about, right? Yeah. So they can actually pull that stunt. But as soon as they start to have to deal with the kind of stuff that California deals with, the taxes will come right back up, man.
Well, I think, you got to remember, this was like Washington didn't do this just recently, right? This has been decades.
Well,
since
no,
it's been
but
like
that's still the case, right?
Yeah.
They have
I think California
in terms of infrastructure.
Yeah, California's whole idea was Hollywood, right? That there'd always be celebrities living there, rich people, because you have to be in LA, right? For if you want to make it big. Silicon Valley's still there, so I think there's still, if you want to be a venture capitalist, or California is still the place to be for that. So I think
absolutely. But I mean, there is a price to pay if you're going to be in a state like that. There's a huge infrastructure, and there's 30 million plus people living there.
Yeah, more people, I think, living there than Canada, actually.
Yes, absolutely. Right? So there's a certain amount that a corporate citizen has to pay into the Commonwealth for the privilege of operating within that state. And most of these companies are jumping ship just because they don't want to pay tax. And that, you know what? It's the price of doing business.
Texas might have a higher population, though. Oh, it's about some. I don't know. California's higher.
And this is where
California's higher by almost 10 million.
Yeah. And Texas, again, comparatively speaking, has shit for infrastructure. It's not a big.
This is kind of where I back Friedman's statement about capitalism. He's like, business is good as long as it does things, for the right of the community that it's serving, and not against the community that it's serving. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's us and them.
Honestly, it's just me. When I look at California, it's a basket case. Like, I would be getting out if I even lived there. I got family in California. They're mostly all out of it because you guys heard about their pension fund too, right? Like, California is actually broke, which is weird because again, we think about it, Hollywood and all this kind of stuff, but the government's even dipping into the pension funds now in California. So it's to me, it's a dead state.
Had things like PG&E, for fuck's sakes. They still haven't even paid Canada for the energy they stole from us.
Yeah,
so it's a bit of a shit show, absolutely. But I don't think it's had any help from the corporate community. I think all we've got is a bunch of belly aching and it rises from the 1980s ideal that every man for him fucking self, and let's deregulate everything because business will take care of itself. I'm sorry, business won't. As I said before, by nature, we'll eat each other's babies to get ahead. We need a little bit of regulation.
I know we're about to run out of time, but there's a statement from this John Swanson. He's a fictional character on Parks and Recreation.
Yes. And
he's the epitome of an American system. And he has this famous line. He says, "My favorite thing in the world is capitalism. It is God's way of picking people who are smart and picking people who are poor." That's his favorite statement. And I'm just like, yeah, a lot of Americans probably think like that.
Very true. Yeah. Very true. Well, on that note, yes, TK is right. It's been a wonderful show. You guys have also, made it lots of really good input so people can walk away from this with a clearer picture of the economic scene around them. But we're at 40 minutes, man. I think we should probably back off and let you guys get on with your day. Much appreciated. You guys take care. This is this week for Vishal and Company. We'll be back next week with at least Maddie. I hopefully Joseph. He might be, as we were talking about earlier, off doing a holiday weekend kind of thing because it is, of course, Canadian Thanksgiving
Long
this
weekend.
weekend. So he might be off prepping himself to party, which I wouldn't blame him for because if I had the opportunity, I'd probably do the same thing. All righty, guys. Take care. See you next week. Au revoir.